Sun Tzu's wisdom, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting," frames the economic drama between the US and China. This isn't a battle of soldiers but of tariffs, supply chains, and tech patents. The real contest is a strategic long game, where patience and foresight are key. The US, confident in its economic leadership, wielded tariffs like a sword. China, however, played a different game, focusing on long-term planning and control of modern life's essentials. The trade war is about defining the world order for the next century. As of late 2025, the contest has entered a critical phase, with global supply chains as the new battlefield. Technologies central to our lives are at the heart of this struggle. Understanding this story is crucial to grasping our future. In a bold and calculated move, China announced new restrictions on rare earth exports, sending a clear message to the world. The decision sent shockwaves through global markets, triggering immediate volatility and uncertainty among investors and governments alike. Rare earth elements, essential for everything from smartphones and electric vehicles to advanced military systems, are the backbone of modern technology, and China holds the lion's share of their production. While other nations shuddered their minds due to high costs and environmental concerns, China made a strategic bet. It poured resources into mining and processing, accepting significant environmental damage in exchange for market dominance. By the early 2020s in China had secured control over more than 60% of global rare earth mining and an astonishing 90% of processing capacity, making itself the world's indispensable supplier. The export restrictions marked a turning point, signaling a dramatic shift in global power dynamics and economic leverage. The United States felt the impact immediately. Defense contractors and tech giants alike faced potential shortages, with critical projects suddenly at risk. China's Gambit exposed deep vulnerabilities in America's supply chains, revealing just how dependent the US had become on its chief rival for materials vital to national security and innovation. Over decades, the US had allowed its own rare earth industry to wither, leaving factories and entire sectors reliant on Chinese imports for their most basic components. The message from Beijing was unmistakable: push too hard in trade disputes and China could simply turn off the tap, crippling industries worldwide. This was economic statecraft at its finest, China wielding its dominance not with military might, but with the power of supply and demand. For the US, the crisis was a wake-up call, the result of decades of offshoring and neglecting domestic production in favor of short-term profits. Suddenly, the Pentagon and major corporations were scrambling, launching emergency reviews, and searching for ways to secure alternative supplies. The rare earth shock underscored the urgent need for long-term resilience, pushing policymakers and industry leaders to rethink the balance between efficiency and security. In Washington, the debate shifted. Lawmakers and officials began to reconsider America's approach to global dependencies, realizing that economic security is national security. The US responded with tough talk, as officials and politicians took to the podiums, determined to show strength and resolve in the face of China's rare earth restrictions. The rhetoric was bold, with leaders vowing to protect American interests and ensure national security. Policy initiatives were quickly rolled out, aiming to counter China's grip on these critical minerals. New bills were introduced, and government agencies were tasked with finding solutions to reduce dependence on foreign sources. The president, standing before workers and machines, vowed that America would not be held hostage by foreign powers. He announced ambitious plans to boost domestic production, promising investments in mining, research, and manufacturing. Congress echoed this sentiment, calling for a unified, bipartisan effort to reclaim self-sufficiency and restore America's industrial strength. Committees held hearings, and lawmakers debated strategies late into the night. Yet, while public rhetoric was strong and confident, the reality behind the scenes was far more complicated. The nation scrambled to rebuild supply chains that had been neglected for decades, facing logistical and technical challenges at every turn. Rebuilding domestic rare earth capabilities was a monumental task, requiring not just new mines, but also advanced processing plants and a reliable infrastructure to support them. It demanded complex facilities, strict environmental compliance, and the development of a highly skilled workforce, none of which could be achieved overnight. Industry experts and economists warned that even with the best intentions, it could take a decade or more to truly challenge China's dominance in the rare earth market. The gap between political promises and actual capabilities was stark. Many American facilities sat idle or unfinished while China's refineries operated at full capacity. The US had one major rare earth mine, Mountain Pass, but still relied heavily on China for the crucial refining process, highlighting a critical vulnerability. This single detail encapsulated America's predicament: abundant resources, but a lack of processing power and infrastructure to turn them into finished products. Politicians continued to promise swift action, but the technical and economic hurdles were immense, and progress was slow. No matter how powerful the speeches or how passionate the appeals, they couldn't change the hard facts on the ground or speed up the complex process of rebuilding an industry. Meanwhile, China watched confidently, knowing that the US couldn't build a refinery overnight, and that for now, the balance of power remained firmly in their hands. China's move was the result of decades of strategic preparation. While the US offshored manufacturing, China built a self-reliant industrial base. The Made in China 2025 initiative aimed to lead in high-tech manufacturing. China invested billions in R&D, subsidizing key industries and acquiring technology. Chinese companies mastered entire production processes, not just assembly. The US relied on market forces while China used a state-directed model. China made long-term investments that private companies couldn't justify. It secured global resources through the Belt and Road Initiative. China built redundancy into its system, exploiting its rivals' lack of it. When restricting rare earths, China had diversified access to other materials. It created a global logistics network serving its strategic interests. China's quiet preparation was a strategic checkmate. The trade war's impact became tangible for Americans as China's rare earth strategy unfolded. What once seemed like distant policy decisions now hit home, as the consequences rippled through daily life and the economy. The modern automobile, reliant on microchips and magnets, faced production delays and rising costs. Car manufacturers struggled to source essential components, leading to bottlenecks on assembly lines and uncertainty for workers. Electric vehicle prices climbed, and wait times extended. Shoppers hoping to go green found themselves waiting months for delivery, as shortages of rare earth materials slowed production to a crawl. Smartphones, reliant on Chinese components, saw costs rise and innovation slow. New models arrived less frequently, and consumers paid more for features that once came standard. The trade war's impact was a slow squeeze, affecting everyday goods. From groceries to household essentials, price tags crept upward, straining family budgets across the country. Out-of-stock notices and higher repair bills became common. Mechanics explained longer wait times for parts, and shoppers found empty shelves where basic items used to be. The agricultural sector, reliant on advanced tech, faced higher costs. Farmers paid more for equipment and repairs, as imported components became harder to find and more expensive. China's strategy targeted foundational supply chain components. The ripple effect was felt in factories and warehouses, where delays and shortages became the new normal. The intricate web of global trade became a vulnerability. What once enabled efficiency now exposed weaknesses, as disruptions in one country echoed worldwide. Americans felt the absence of materials like neodymium and dysprosium. These rare earths, invisible to most, were suddenly at the center of a global struggle. Their scarcity impacting everything from cars to smartphones. The price on everyday goods was a reminder of the global power play. Each receipt told a story of international tension as families adjusted to a new economic reality. The trade war's impact was subtle but effective. Fewer choices on shelves and gradual price hikes signaled a shift, even as daily routines continued. China's moves created widespread disruption without a dramatic blockade. Instead, the world watched as supply chains slowed and uncertainty grew in boardrooms and households alike. The average American began to feel the real-world cost of the trade war. Budgeting became more challenging, and every shopping trip brought new reminders of the global standoff. The strategy demonstrated the vulnerability of interconnected trade. As nations reconsidered their dependencies, the lesson was clear. In a globalized world, every link in the chain matters. China pursued technological self-reliance, aiming to become a tech superpower. US tariffs accelerated China's drive to reduce dependence on American tech. China invested billions in its semiconductor industry, building new fabs. By 2025, Chinese companies produced mid-range chips, reducing foreign reliance. China developed its own operating systems, GPS network, and tech standards. The goal was a parallel tech universe immune to US sanctions. China diversified trade relationships, creating a resilient global network. While the US talked decoupling, China rewired global economic circuits. The trade war aimed to revive US manufacturing but had ironic consequences. Companies like Apple faced dilemmas with increased costs and market risks. Tariffs hit American manufacturers like Caterpillar, raising costs and reducing sales. The agricultural sector, reliant on Chinese markets, faced financial ruin. China reoriented its food supply chain away from the US policies intended to bring jobs back, often had the opposite effect. Companies shifted operations to other low-cost countries, not the US. Trade diversion meant jobs moved from China to elsewhere, not back home. The US consumer paid higher prices, but workers saw little benefit. The trade war disrupted China but inflicted self-inflicted wounds on the US. The strategy to isolate China risked isolating the US instead. The trade war's consequences were deeply ironic and damaging. Decoupling from China seemed a solution but proved a double-edged sword. US actions accelerated China's drive for technological independence. Blacklisting Huawei spurred China's self-sufficiency efforts. Other countries deepened trade with China, seeing it as stable. The Belt and Road Initiative gained momentum, offering investment without strings. Decoupling's economic cost for the US was immense. Untangling from China meant higher prices and inflationary pressures. The vision of independence clashed with the reality of globalization's complexity. By late 2025, the trade war hasn't produced a decisive victory for the US. The conflict has become a protracted economic Cold War. America's goals to reduce the trade deficit and curb China's rise have largely failed. China has played a masterful long game, leveraging its strengths. It absorbed initial pain, using the challenge to address weaknesses. China's calm public image and internal push for self-reliance shifted the narrative. The US faces challenges with a divided political system and eroded industrial base. The future is defined by ongoing struggle between competing systems. China has emerged stronger, demonstrating resilience and strategic foresight. The real power play continues, with no final winner in sight.